Good evening from New York. I'm Chris Hayes. When a party wins a new majority in Congress, generally what they want to do is hit the ground running. So far, the Republicans have not done that. After an interminable series of votes, historic, in fact, House Republicans did finally elect Kevin McCarthy Speaker of the House. And earlier this month, credit where due, they did manage to kick Democratic Congresswoman Ilhan Omar off the Foreign Affairs Committee for reasons they weren't really able to articulate. But apart from that, on issues of actual substance, they've got nothing to show for their majority. As the New York Times put it somewhat diplomatically, 6 weeks into the majority, Republican leaders have found themselves paralyzed on some of the biggest issues they promised to address as they pressed to win control of the House last year. More simply, you might say Republicans are in disarray. And it really shouldn't be this hard. This is governing on easy mode. Because Republicans only control the House, while Democrats control the Senate and the White House. They don't even need to worry about passing something that could just become law. It's literally all just messaging bills. And they somehow can't even do that right. After running a midterm campaign on inflation and gas prices and crime, they've done nothing to even symbolically address those issues. Instead, they've turned Congress into the legislative branch of Fox News, holding these hearings about why their Twitter accounts were banned and promising to investigate why a TV provider dropped Newsmax. And yes, you can chalk a lot of this up to the personalities at issue, the kinds of people who excel in modern Republican politics, the fractiousness, the MAGA caucus calling the shots in a narrow majority. But that doesn't explain it all. I actually think there's something much deeper at play. I have a theory here. And an illustration of that theory in action is all on display right now in the reaction to the train derailment disaster in Ohio. So, as you've likely heard, as Mehdi covered on the program last night, train carrying chemicals, including a toxic flammable gas called vinyl chloride, derailed near the Ohio-Pennsylvania border earlier this month. That, in turn, started a fire, and then they had to do a sort of controlled release of some of those chemicals, which blanketed the town of East Palestine, Ohio, in noxious smoke. There are, as of today and continuing, really significant concerns about the accident leaving behind a lasting environmental disaster. And many residents of the town of East Palestine are complaining of health issues and, understandably, fearful about returning to their homes.
Some living in the area are still smelling strong chemical odors. Now they're demanding transparency about what toxins might be lurking in local creeks and in the atmosphere, how they could potentially impact the area in the future. The EPA says the village's water supply is safe. Residents are worried that homes with well water may be at risk. And residents say they want long-term testing with the results publicly posted.
When journalists from the New Republic interviewed people on the ground, including a woman whose family donned N95 masks and gloves before entering their contaminated home, only to find, quote, after leaving her eyes burned and itched, her throat was sore, she had a rash, her husband and both her sisters had migraines. Another woman who lives by the accident site, quote, has suffered from a sore throat while her 8-month-old baby has suffered respiratory issues. Now, after enormous public pressure, Norfolk Southern, which is the rail company that operated the train that derailed, announced a new round of financial assistance to benefit the impacted community today. But it's pretty clear that a lot more needs to be done for the people of East Palestine. And this is where we come to what I think is the sort of fundamental failure of the Republican Party right now. Because Republicans have had a lot to say about the incident. They've been talking about a lot. They've mostly been trying to score political points at the expense of the Biden administration. Marjorie Taylor Greene, current thought leader of the Republican Party, who voted against the bipartisan infrastructure bill last Congress, went on a somewhat bizarre Twitter rant where she seemed to blame pot-addled liberals for our crumbling institutions. Ohio Republican Senator J.D. Vance, fresh on the job, blamed the bipartisan infrastructure bill for not magically solving the problem of the train's derailment overnight.
We've had hundreds of train derailments after we spent over $1 trillion on infrastructure in this country. So the fact that this isn't getting obviously better is a major indictment of the people spending the money and what they're spending the money on.
Now, that bill passed in November 2021. That was the appropriation for the money. It hasn't been spent, right? And we have not been able to fix an entire nation's crumbling infrastructure in the intervening year, though it's not clear this was an infrastructure problem to begin with. Now, a number of Republicans have also come forward to blame Biden's high-profile transportation secretary, Pete Buttigieg, including Florida Congressman Byron Donalds.
I don't even know why we take Pete Buttigieg seriously at this point. This man, the only reason he's in his job is because of his intersectionality. Let's just be honest about the situation. He doesn't know what he's doing. He's actually been a terrible transportation secretary. I mean, look, when the supply chains were being blown up, the man wasn't even at work. Nobody missed him. Nobody even knew he was there.
He was on paternity leave when that happened for his child was born. Now, to be clear, Donalds is accusing Buttigieg of only getting his job because he's gay. It's a gross smear. But one right-wing podcaster took things a step further.
Buttigieg is out talking about how workers are too white. For the last couple of years, I have been warning about this crusade against white people, and people shrug their shoulders and say, oh, Charlie, why does that matter? I could tell you why it matters. When there's a crisis now and the leaders hate working class whites, they're not going to scramble to save your life. They'll lie to you and tell you to go back home while you're poisoned.
Oh, lie to you and tell you to go back home when you're poisoned. Sure, that's never happened to black people in this country before. Yeah, let me just check on the history. Nope, definitely never happened. Okay, I'm cherry picking particularly ludicrous examples, but this is what they do. I mean, there's a real thing that happened, right? A very real thing. Real people really impacted by a real disaster. Tangible thing. But whenever there's a problem or a crisis, folks on the right got someone or some group that's out to get you. And maybe it's the openly gay Secretary of Transportation or a fictional cabal of woke elites conspiring against white people. And I get it. Republicans think this is a very sound rhetorical and political strategy. And I get why they're worked up about this issue. East Palestine is a very white, rural, working-class place. It's the kind of town Donald Trump and Fox News tell you has been forgotten by woke elites. And when they say it's been forgotten and left behind, they're not entirely wrong. There's a real nugget of truth there. It's also true that Pete Buttigieg is Secretary of Transportation, that he isn't the guy in charge of regulating the railroads. And legitimate good faith criticisms of his job performance, rather than his identity, are obviously completely fair game. When you're the administration, when you're the presidency, this is the stuff you got to answer for. There's a major train derailment on your watch. Okay, so far so good. There's a real problem, right? Pete Buttigieg really is the transportation secretary. But here's where all of a sudden it ends. Republicans can complain all they want, but what do you want to do? What do you want to do? They can't really offer any real solutions because in the end, this is a classic story about corporate interest and regulation. Big corporations like the railroad companies, Norfolk Southern, and the chemical companies whose chemicals they transport have every monetary incentive under shareholder capitalism to keep regulation light, right? So their costs stay low. And then if something goes bad, they can externalize the costs of disasters like this, right? The government, in turn, has a responsibility to push regulation anyway to prevent the burden of disasters like this falling on regular folks like those in the town of East Palestine. For liberals like myself, this is all a pretty clear story. The solutions here are pretty clear. We should probably have better regulation and stronger worker power. Here's one example, right? For instance, there was an Obama-era train braking rule specifically for cars carrying flammable materials. They had to upgrade their braking. That was eliminated under Donald Trump, although he was eliminated with an assist from a small provision in a 2015 bill passed by Congress and, signed by Obama, that the train corporations had lobbied for that had kind of challenged and watered down the regulation. Now, in this case, it wasn't the braking, we think. There was a fire on the train before it derailed. But again, that's the kind of prudential safety regulation you want to look at. Like, okay, maybe we need to upgrade safety regulatory standards on train cars like this. You can also make polluters pay for the cleanup costs of disasters caused by their products and services, like the Superfund site situation. Okay? Again, these are just two straightforward answers, policy answers, that will make people's lives tangibly better or at least address the problem. But here's the thing. Contemporary conservatives in the Republican Party can't offer those types of solutions. Can they say, you know what? We need to regulate the railroad companies. No. Are they going to say that? Let's stick it to the greedy companies, soak the rich. They can't do that. That's what libs want to do. Conservatives are not ideologically disposed to those types of ambers. More importantly, the entire superstructure of Republican politics, including their donors, won't let them do it. No matter how much lip service they pay to regular working folks on their various podcasts, the Republican Party is fundamentally, when the chips are down, when it's time for the rubber to hit the road, when it's time to govern, beholden to the rich and corporate interests. And there are conservatives watching this right now who will see this clip who will agree with me. I promise you. Here's example number one, Kevin McCarthy, the new Speaker of the House, top Republican in the country, essentially letting his buddy, Jeff Miller, who's like a top corporate lobbyist, basically help run the party. The guy was like running the war room behind his speaker vote. And again, this isn't a question of rhetoric. It's not a question of like sound bites and all that stuff. Politics is about interests and power and who the government helps and who it hurts and what it does. So what do Republicans really care about? There's a record here. What do they do when they had power? Well, they had a trifecta. They had the White House and the House and Senate, and they tried to repeal Obamacare, which, by the way, would have absolutely screwed over white working class voters. Their repeal plan. Even Tucker Carlson, the fake populist, frozen food heir, called Trump out for it.
This bill has as one of its centerpieces a tax cut for investors that would primarily benefit people making over $250,000 a year. Already done pretty well in the past 10 years, as you know.
Yeah.
A Bloomberg analysis showed that counties that voted for you, middle class and working class counties, would do far less well under this bill than the counties that voted for Hillary, the more affluent counties.
I know.
It seems like maybe this isn't consistent with the message of the last election.
No, a lot of things aren't consistent.
Perfect. You ran on, we're going to screw over we're going to go after the globalists and Hillary Clinton, the WikiLeaks, and we're going to help you. But now you're passing a tax cut for rich people and screwing over the you in that? I don't get it. Yeah, you have just put your finger on the contradiction at the heart of it all. Now, Obamacare repeal failed. So Republicans then moved on to Plan B. Again, what do you want to do with power? And it was the biggest tax cut since Ronald Reagan. They slashed the corporate tax rate. That's what they want to do. That was about it. That was the extent of the governing agenda. That's the problem with the modern Republican Party. Who they are, who they claim to be are fundamentally at odds. Because it's true, their base increasingly is rural working class voters. Folks who have real material needs, like the people in East Palestine who can't get into their home that need to be met. But all they can offer them is culture war nonsense. The problem is your transportation secretary is gay. Because their corporate masters won't let them do anything to take on the big corporations or help workers or organize labor. And so what you get a lot of tweets. You got a page on the House Republican website advertising all their members' various podcasts. You can listen to all their podcasts. Look at that. They've all got podcasts. Good for them. On those podcasts, they rail against the liberal elites. But what you do not get is any real solution for actual real people.